Hi everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Been a while since I posted, even though I've not been working, but I thought I'd do a video today on how to become a driving instructor. There might be people out there that have, through the recent pandemic, lost their jobs and maybe looking to do something different, and maybe having to think about becoming a driving instructor as one of those options. So this is a little bit of a video just to show you or explain to you what you need to do to become a driving instructor. Might go on a little bit, there's quite a lot of detail, but I'll try and keep it as short as possible. So we'll cover pros and cons of being a driving instructor, type of person you need to be, the age and driving experience that you need to become a driving instructor, how to apply, the 3 tests you've got to do, how much it costs to register and when you register, and then timescale and costs and sort of my thoughts on becoming a driving instructor and what I think of it. So don't forget, give the video a like, give the page a like and a subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell button. And yeah, we'll get into it. Okay, so first thing to talk about are the pros and cons of being a driving instructor. So for me, the pros far outweigh the cons, and we'll start with the pros first. There is always a downside to every job, but we don't want to talk about it too much. The pros. So you are self-employed. So you can choose to work when you like, how much you like, and how often you like. You choose who you work with as well, to a degree. A student might come to you. It may be after a few lessons you can see that it's not going the way that you might hope. That's the time to be honest with them and just say, I don't think it's working, because they're probably thinking the same, or have a conversation with them about how they feel it's going. And then if it's not working, then you can move on, and that kind of gets rid of the dread of going to work, because you don't want to have to dread going to work. For me, it's about work-life balance as well. So I get a really good balance. So I can do the school runs, I can go all the school things. I don't want to work, then I don't have to work, so I don't have to work and miss Christmas nativity things and sports days and that anymore. Now, as soon as I know it, I can take that time off, and no one tells me that I can't, other than me. The sense of achievement that you get when somebody passes their test is brilliant. All the hard work that you've done and the hard work that they've done pays off, and somebody passes their driving test, that moment is brilliant, because you're there when they get told. And doing something, I do something now that I really enjoy, so I feel quite lucky in that sense, because not a lot of people enjoy what they do for work. Now, on the other side of it, being self-employed can be a little bit of a downside as well. Whilst there are many pluses to being self-employed, the other one is sort of, if the wheels ain't turning, you ain't earning. So if you're at home, as nice as it is, you aren't earning, so you have to bear that in mind, isn't it? Sometimes it's a nice break, but you obviously have to bear that in mind. You don't get any holiday pay, you don't get any sick pay, so you need to put that aside. Obviously, with what's happened in the last year with this pandemic, it's been really tough, and it's been really tough being self-employed. So with no money coming in, not being allowed to work, so that there is that to bear in mind. Obviously, you get unreliable students, and when they then don't turn up for a lesson, or they cancel it, and you then end up losing money. That can be frustrating. There are ways around that, but that's not really for this video. There's ways to protect your income a little bit, but there are going to be days where things happen and you don't earn, such as you might be driving to a lesson and then you get a puncture, or you're on a lesson and you get a puncture. Well, that means you've got to go and get that fixed. If you don't have a spare or the ability to change it yourself, then that's probably going to mean your next lesson isn't going to happen, and you're going to pay best part of £100 for a tyre and lose out on your lesson fee. And that could be any kind of breakdown. And then obviously you've got to sort your own tax and national insurance and bits and pieces like that. So if you're not that way inclined to be able to deal with that sort of thing, then I've employed an accountant, and it makes my life so much easier. For me, the pros way outweigh the cons. The puncture thing, you generally tend to get them in batches. You could go months and months without one. You could go weeks and weeks without a student cancelling a lesson. You could, all those sorts of things, but then they could happen really close together. But you'll find it balances out across the course of a month and a year. To move on next to the type of person that you need to be. You have to be a people person. You are going to meet all different types of people, and it's not all just 17-year-old kids. For me, the majority of it are more 50-50 split with 17-year-olds and slightly older 20, mid-20s and over 20-year-olds, and even older, the people that, because it's expensive to learn to drive, it's not always achievable when you're young, because it's then expensive to run a car as well when you're young, with the insurance being so high. You need to be adaptable, because you can't just say you apply the same thing to the same person and you'll get the same result all the time. It doesn't work like that, because everybody's individual. You need to be patient, calm, responsible, all these sorts of things, honest, and definitely self-motivated. Because once you're out there, if you're not motivated enough to maybe do a little bit of advertising on Facebook when you need a little bit of an extra boost, or get yourself involved in something to push your business on, or if you can't be bothered to get up and you just cancel a lesson, then it's going to affect you and you're going to feel like it's a rubbish job. It's definitely one that you get out what you put in. There is an age limit, so your age and experience that you need, you have to be 21 and you have to have had your driving licence for at least 3 years. You can't have been banned from driving in the last 4 years. Obviously, if you're teaching someone to drive, you need to be able to drive well, and it's not a no for you to be able to do it if you've ever been banned. You just need to not have been recently. You have to have less than 6 points on your driving licence as well. So some of this isn't always a straight out no. So the points, depending on when they were and what they were for. I'm not the registrar or the person that makes the decision. It's not always black and white. You can give some supporting evidence and they may well help you out a little bit and push you. And also there's certain non-motoring convictions that will obviously prevent you from becoming a driving instructor. If you've ever been convicted of certain, obviously, sexual offences, or certain other, there's a list online, there's other non-motoring offences that will and can have an effect on whether you get accepted onto the register to be a driving instructor. But as long as those are the first sort of steps. As long as you meet those and you don't have these convictions and you have the relevant driving experience, you should then you should be able to start applying to become a driving instructor. Now, most people, when they learn to become a driving instructor, will go through one of the big driving schools. So RED, Bill Plant, the AA, BSM, any of those sort of people, and they will do your training all inclusive of everything except from test fees. Ordinarily, you won't need to do all of this yourself if you're going through them. I'll talk about how they work a bit later on, and it may always seem like a better offer to do it with those guys than it is to try and do it yourself and find your own way around it, but it's not always the best way. So the first thing you'd need to do once you begin to apply is you need to get a DBS check done. Again, the link's online on the gov.uk website about applying for your DBS. It's not expensive. Obviously they need that to support your application. You'll go online onto a portal and through the gov.uk site. Once you've got your DBS and you begin to apply, all of those, they'll ask for your information like your driving license number, your date of birth, all of those bits and pieces, so they can verify who you are, and you can track where everything is and whether they've got your DBS check back and whether it was satisfactory and all of that sort of stuff. Once you've made the decision and you know you definitely want to do it, the thing you'd need to do then would be start revising for your first of your 3 tests called the ADI Part 1. So the ADI Part 1, some of you might know this if you've researched into doing this before. This may not be your first thing you've looked at about becoming a driving instructor. Is a redo of your theory test basically, but it's got more in it that's geared towards a driving instructor. There's more questions and a higher pass mark for your hazard perception part of your theory test as well. So if you're on your own, you need to find your own revision material. If you are going through a school, which again most people will do, there are many options. So we'll just talk about that briefly now. So your options will be you go through a RED or a BSM or wherever. You pay them the fee that they ask you to pay, which is anywhere from £800 to £2,500 to learn to become a driving instructor. And then they will support you with some revision material. Usually they'll give you access to a website or somewhere to be able to practice. They'll assist you. If you can do all this bit first without ever going through a driving school. So far you'd be in your revision materials. So you could find revision materials, so you could get a highway code. There's other driving instructor related books. There's theory revision stuff that you can get, that you can set up, so for driving instructor theory rather than just learner test theory. So you could do all that yourself, and would probably cost you less than £100. Revise, 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 revise is all you can say on this bit. You have to revise, and don't take it for granted. You only want to do any one of these tests once. They are more expensive than a learner test, but then that's because you're teaching the learner, so they build more into it. There's more to it, so they charge more. So there's two parts to this. Part one, the multiple choice part of the exam, which is 100 questions. You have to get at least 85 right. There's 4 basic areas that they ask you questions in, and you need to score 20 out of 25 in each one of those, at least, to pass. So if you got 25 out of 25 on 3 sections, and then 10 to get your 85 in the 4th section, you would fail, even though you got 85. So you need to have good broad knowledge. Your score for the theory test, like I said, 85 out of 100 you have to get on those, and there will be 100 questions. Your theory, the next part of your theory test would be the hazard perception. You need to score at least 57 out of 75 to score a pass. So you have 14 hazard clips that are shown on the screen. One of them has 2 hazards in the clip, and the other ones all have 1, but they won't tell you which one has 2. You have to identify it yourself. So that's why really important, why once you've seen a hazard, you don't stop until the end of the clip. You don't stop concentrating until the end of the clip. So you can't fail your hazard perception but pass your theory and then go back and just pass hazard perception. You have to do both sections in one go, and you can retry this as many times as you want. The cost for the part 1 for the theory is £81. Now a theory test for a learner is only 23, so it's considerably more expensive. So you don't want to be doing it too many times. So practice and practice and practice, book it, keep practicing, pass it first time is what you want to do. The next part, so once you pass that, you can go on to your what's called the ADI part 2, and part 2 is a redo of your driving test basically. Obviously if you are going to be teaching people how to drive, you need to be able to drive that way yourself. You need to be able to drive well yourself and safely yourself, so they are checking that for you. So that test, so we'll start with the cost, £111. Again, something you only want to be doing once. You don't want to be doing that more than once. It can become quite costly. Your driving test will last for an hour. You will be taken on all types of roads. You do a bit of motorway driving as well, to make sure you can do that as well, because you can teach motorway as well. They'll get you to do an eyesight check before anything else happens. You need to be able to read a number plate from a new style number plate from 26.5 meters and an old style from 27.5 meters. But they'll test that, and if you fail that part, if you can't do that before you get, you won't even get in the car. They won't allow you to take the test. You'll need to supply your own car as well, so just take your own car with you. It can be manual, it can be automatic, it doesn't matter. You can just take your car with you, and they will sit next to you and assess your drive. It's marked in the same way. It's marked using the same criteria as a standard driving test, except from it's marked more harshly, and you don't have as much leeway as you would in a learner test. So you would be expected during the test to do 2 parking manoeuvres or reversing manoeuvres, so either any of the 4 standard manoeuvres that we have at the minute, which may have changed from when you did your driving test. So reverse bay parking, parallel parking, pulling up on the right hand side of the road and reversing back for 2 car lengths, and forward bay parking and then reversing back out of the space. So you'd be asked to do 2 of the 4 of them. You'd be asked to do 5 show me tell me questions, which again you may never have done before, but it's basic vehicle operations and safety checks, so it's nothing that you wouldn't know how to do already. There'd be 3 tell me questions and 2 show me questions. You'll do independent driving, so using a sat nav or road signs to complete your journey. That would be happening as well. And then that's it. You just drive around and do as the examiner asks you to do. You are only allowed to get up to 6 minor faults, which are called driver faults. Any more than that and you fail, and any serious or dangerous issues you would then fail for as well. Once you get to this stage, you're only allowed 3 attempts at this before you then have to restart your process. a good idea at this stage to start thinking about, I'm going to pay for some, if you're not with a national driving school or with a local driving school, if you're still on your own and you've thought, well, I'm going to go on my own for a little bit more, phone a local driving instructor or find out someone from the audit register for driver trainers to help you. Take a day with them, maybe take 8 hours with them to assess your driving and see where you need to go. I wouldn't go into it without any sort of assessment from a driving instructor, even if it was only a few hours, but I'd try and take a day so you get a really good impression of what's going on. If you're with a driving school, very often the training for part 2 and the assessment drives will be done 2 to 1, so 2 people in one car and one driving instructor with you. To touch back onto that, if you were to fail 3 times, before you'd have to then wait 2 years from when you passed your theory test, your part 1, before you could start again. So you'd have to wait. So if you passed your theory on the 1st of January 2021 and you failed your third part 2 in November of 2021, you'd have to wait till January 2023 till you could start again. So once you hopefully pass that, and hopefully you pass it first time, you would then start training for your part 3. Now the part 3, the ADI part 3, is your instructional ability test. Another test that costs another £111. But before you get to that stage, you have to take 40 hours of training. Now, it doesn't all have to be in car. A minimum of 10 hours of it has to be in car. But it doesn't all have to be in car. Majority of places will do at least sort of 34, 35 hours in car. Because there's quite a lot of topics to cover. Now, you do this training once you've passed your part 2. I did mine on like 5 4-hour days. That took me up to 40 hours. We weren't solidly in the car for that time. We'd have a breakaway and we'd chat about stuff and talk about things, and that's all helping you learning. You need to do that training. Once you've done that, you can either choose to go straight for your part 3 test. The issue there is, again, if you've got no experience and definitely if you're not with a driving school, you won't have access to any pupils to be able to take, and you won't have any, because you need to take a pupil with you, so you'd be relying on a friend, because it can be a full license holder. It could be taking a friend or someone that you know, a niece or nephew that you might know that's learning to drive, and you could take them for a lesson, because your part 3 test is a lesson that is assessed by somebody sat in the back watching what you're doing. And you need to have access potentially to a dual control car as well, which you may not have at that point. So the other way that you can go after you've done your training is to take what's called a PDI badge, and I've got one. I'll just grab mine up, my old one. It looks like that. It should be a bit pinker, more like that, pink. Now what that does is that's a 6-month trainee license, and PDI stands for potential driving instructor. They last for 6 months to allow you to gain experience prior to taking the final test. Also allows you to charge for lessons. So very often, as soon as, especially if you're with a school, and even with a local school, if you're a national driving school, they'll get you to apply for your pink badge if you didn't go straight for the test. And then once you've got that, they'll get you straight out and in with learners. It's really good to get that experience, in my opinion. Also, it gives you students. You've then got the a pool of students. You can then ask one of them to come with you to your part 3. Now your part 3 exam, you might have it booked in for a month after you passed your part 2. You finish your training for 40 hours. You might not have it booked in till 5 months after. So there's potential for you to learn a little bit of how things work in the real world with the student in the car. There's also the potential for you to lose a little bit of what you should be doing and how you should be doing things. If you do choose to go down that pink badge PDI route, you will have to do another 20 hours training or have 20% of your lessons supervised. Now, the supervision one is very, very rare, because if you are working 30 hours, 40 hours a week teaching on a pink badge, which the DVSA would tell you that's not the point of it, you're not supposed to be out there doing full-time work, but most people by that point will have gone, right, I want to get going, and will get going, especially if you're the franchise with a £300 a week fee to pay for your car and your students and stuff. 20% is 8 hours a week, and then how are you going to get a driving instructor to sit in the back with you for 8 hours a week? That's going to cost you £240 a week for them to supervise your lessons. So most people will go, I'll pay for another 20 hours Or if you're with a driving school, very often it'll be part of what you've already paid, especially if you're doing stuff 2 to 1. 2 learners to 2 trainee instructors to 1 teaching instructor, which sounds bad, but it sounds like you're not getting value for money, but actually from my experience and my point of view, I got so much from, equally as much if not more, from observing somebody else learning as I did from being the person in the seat myself. Your pink badge costs you £140, the PDI badge. Like I said, it lasts for 6 months, and then you've got to pay for the addition, potentially pay for the additional hours. And as we touched on already, you could go straight to test to part 3, book a part 3, go straight for it. But you'd need a student from somewhere, and finding that may be challenging. But once you've got all that and you've got all that experience, you've booked your part 3, you paid your £111. If you've got a PDI badge, you'll be just doing what you do day to day. Take a learner with you, obviously explain to them what's going on and ask them if it's all right, and then you deliver a lesson, as you should do through how you're taught. It'll last an hour because you need to deliver an hour's lesson. You need to be able to time it so you can get back, ask the examiner, what time do you want me back here? And they'll say, well, be back here by 5 to 12. And then that's sort of time your lesson for that. Your part 3 is marked as 3 sections and 17 areas within those sections that they mark. Each are marked out of 3, possible of 51 to score. The 3 sections are lesson planning, risk management, and teaching and learning strategies. And now I'll show you the sheet on the screen. Hopefully you'll get good marks. You need 31 out of 51 to pass to get a B. 43 will get you an A or more, and obviously less than 31, so 30 or less will result in a fail. If you fail, you need to take at least 5 hours further training. So again, failing results in an extra cost, and then an extra cost of a test. So even all these big schools that say, oh, we'll only charge you £800 or however many, whatever their cost is on learning, £2,000, all your test fees you still have to pay yourself. Again, with this, if you fail it 3 times, you will have to wait 2 years before you can restart. So hopefully you pass that, and pass it first, second, third time, whatever. You then need to register as an ADI, and your badge goes from pink to green. This means you are a fully fledged driving instructor. With the pink badge, there are restrictions on what you can and can't do. There's certain restrictions around advertising yourself as a driving instructor because you're not fully a driving instructor. Once you've got your green badge, you can do almost as you please. So, but it does cost £300. Again, something that you'll have to pay over and above your training fees. Once you've got it, it lasts for 4 years. You do not need to reapply and repay that money until 4 years down the line, where you'd need a new DBS as well. After you pass your part 3, they will, they try and aim within 6 months of you pass, 6 months to a year of you passing your part 3, they'll bring you back for what's called a standards check. Usually they're every 4-ish years once you are an established driving instructor, but once you first pass, they just want to have a quick check on you, make sure you're all right, and then set you off on your way. So same thing again here, 3 attempts again. There's no cost to this because it's all part of your fee. It could be that you may feel like, well, I'm a year in, it might be worth going back to your school or the person that did your training and saying, can I just have a day with you? Or can you come and assess a lesson for me, just to make sure I'm doing things right, because I don't want to mess up my standards check. Just take that a little bit, invest a bit in yourself. But then after you pass it, and especially with the way things are at the moment, the backlogs that have been created over this year, you're probably going to be waiting 4 years for your next one anyway. Could be 2 years, but most likely 4 years. And that's the end of the process. Hopefully it made sense. Timescales on this, so be careful what some driving schools will tell you. They say we can get you done in 6 months, 3 months, whatever. A lot of that depends on test availability, so they're going to be hard to come by at the minute potentially. So you might want to do this, you definitely want to start at least alongside your current job, or if you don't have a job at the moment, just get started. You could do it in 6 months if the test availability is there, and if you do everything first time and you dedicate a lot of time to it. Realistically, you're looking about a year, which is why it's important to try and stick at your job you got at the minute, or get started while you're not working, get started as soon as possible. It could take longer. It could take 2 years, 18 months until you finally got the badge in your hand. So for me, I started in September with learning my part 1, practicing for my part 1, and I had passed my part 3 in the May the following year. So it was the end of the May, so that's 8 months. But I was working on a pink badge from the February. Cost-wise, Part 2 training, if you did the 8 hours like I suggested, you'd be looking at £240 for that, just to get you through your driving test for the first time, the Part 2. Your Part 3, I'm going to make sure I'm going to add it up properly. You do 40 hours plus an additional 20 if you took the PDI badge. So it gives you 60 hours times, I'm using £30 an hour as it's easy to work out, but prices vary across the country and from school to school. That gives you an additional £1,800. So add that to the 240 and then add the 617 we had if you pass all your tests first time. You're looking at £2,657. That's a ballpark figure. It could go up to over 3,000 if you're paying an extra £5 an hour potentially. If you start failing tests, you could end up seeing that price come up and up as well. You have to remember as well that you don't necessarily have to pay all this in one go. It's expensive to get into. Just back to the national driving schools, they will offer deals and they might say to you, oh, if you phone, I'll just pick Red as an example. This may not be the way they do it, so this isn't gospel, and I'm not slating the national driving schools because they work for people. They do work. But they may, on the phone to you, they may say, well, we can do your training for £800. And you think, well, that's pretty bloody good. And it is. But what you will be tied into then is at least a 12-month contract. It could be 18 months, it could be 24, to pay them a weekly franchise fee, which will include them giving you a car, potentially, of around £200 to £300 a week. It could be, and I don't know the exact figures from Red, but some schools charge up to and over £300 a week. That's a week. So even as a PDI, you'd be paying that when you might not have many students. So that's why so many people go into full-time working on it. You may pay £800 for your learning, but then if you did a year at £250 a week, so in the middle of those two figures, you would be paying £10,400 a year as a franchise fee. And if you're locked in for even longer, so if it was 18 months, it'd be another £5,200 on that, so £15,600. Yes, you get a nice new car. Yes, you get a bit of software from them, but don't think that they'll give you all the students that you need. You won't. You still have to go and find your own students. You still have to do some advertising. You still have to do all of this stuff that an independent would have to do. You may find a local school would offer a cheaper franchise fee a week that may be £80 a week, but gives you much more freedom on car. So you could use a car you've already got. You could buy your own car and fit some pedals to it. You can do your own research. There's stories out there. I'll let you find out yourself. I will let you make your own mind up. And yeah, cost-wise for a car, if you've got a car that's, as long as it's reliable, it doesn't have to be brand new. The students don't even know what they're driving. You can change your car and they won't even notice. To a different brand, different colour, they'll just come out and sit in the car. If you park in the same place for them every week. You could get a car, if you've already got one, you could get pedals fitted for about £300. And I suppose the last bit of it is, oh, should I do it? My opinion, absolutely yes, 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 yes. I love my job, and I don't feel like I go to work. I love it. I've talked about the cons already. It's tough to start and fairly expensive to train, yes, but it's the feeling you get when someone passes their test is there's nothing better. You're the first person to know that they've passed their test, and the reward they get from all the hard work and the ups and downs they will have been through and the freedom it will give them. And some people, it means so much learning to drive. You end up being the person that's there for that, and it's brilliant. And that's that. It was quite a long one, but there's quite a lot of it. If you are interested, you should get almost all the information you need there. If you've got any questions, stick them in the comments below, and I'll answer as many of them as I can. I don't generally get huge amounts of comments on my video, so I should be able to get to everybody. And all the information's out there. But yeah, please feel free to contact if you need to. Don't forget, if you've got this far, don't forget to give the video a like, give it a share if you can do, subscribe to the channel as well, and I'll if you've got any ideas of things that might be helpful for you, I'll try and make videos from them if I can. Right, thanks, and goodbye.